You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1115. Welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and I am so excited that you are hanging out with me today. Today, we are giving you behind the scenes in regards to our membership communities. And so a lot of our consultants are doing teachings every single week. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we have live teachings going on in our membership. So we wanted to give you a little behind the scenes. So we're going to be hearing from Nicole Ball, talking about what to do when referrals are slow, HR basics with Andrew, client retention with Ashley, scaling with Nicole Ball, choosing the right project management systems, and all sorts of other things over the coming weeks. I can't wait to dig into this with you. If you want help from one of our consultants, please head on over to practiceofthepractice.com/apply. I'll chat with you for 30 minutes to determine if one of our membership communities or consulting might be right for you. Now let's get started with this episode.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I know that we're expecting a handful more people, and so I'm just going to do some light chit chat here while we wait for everybody to join. But I just want to thank you all for coming. I know you're all here because you want to grow your group practices, and I love helping people grow their group practice. It's something that I'm really excited about, and something that I don't know. I love being a cheerleader for other people to do it. So I just want to thank you all for being here because I get to do something I really enjoy. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicole Ball. I am a consultant here at Practice of the Practice. I also have a $1 million practice in Traverse City, Michigan, with 2 locations in Traverse City and a 3rd location outside of Traverse City, about an hour southwest. And so again, if you don't know where that is, that's like right about here's Traverse City, and then here's where my 2nd location is, and then hoping to open up my 3rd location here in the next couple of months. So very exciting. Growth is always exciting, and I love teaching other people about how I've grown and how they can grow as well. So today is going to be part 2 of a 3-part series on what to do when referrals get slow. If you were with us last week, you know that we kind of left off where we left off. And if you weren't with us last week, I would encourage you to please check out the recording, because I think we had some really great topics and had some great questions and great discussion as well. I always leave it open at the end for questioning. So I'm always happy to share not just what we're talking about on topic today, but other things of interest. I'm always excited to share with y'all. So today's topic is knowing your community. So last week we talked about just different strategies for what to do when referrals are slow. And I did talk about today's topic briefly last week, but specifically today with this topic of knowing your community, I think the most important thing to remember is that you are a part of a community. And being a mental health provider and having a group practice means you are a part of a lot of different communities, and knowing those communities is important. So, for example, you are part of the healthcare community. So you are, or to some degree, collaborating with or in the same cabinet, you could say, as other healthcare providers, whether that's doctors, pediatricians, sleep specialists, whether that is, I'm trying to think of other ones here, oncology work. I mean, there's so many different realms in the healthcare industry that we are a part of. I think the other community that we're a part of is the legal system. I don't know about all of you, but I do get a lot of my referrals from the court. I get a lot of referrals from lawyers. And I think that being part of that legal community is something that we forget about sometimes. We are also, most of us are part of some kind of higher education or school community. So I think sometimes we forget about our relationships, not only with the high schools and elementary schools in our area, but the great relationships that we have the opportunity to have with our local universities, whether it's community college or university college, or whether it is extended learning opportunities. That's another community that I think that we can be aware of. And by the way, I'm going to come back and talk about each of these individually. I'm just kind of spouting some of these off right now. Another community that I think that many of us are becoming a part of and becoming more of a topic is with the holistic community. So folks who do massage, acupuncture, energy work, people who do a lot of the integrative medicine. I think that we are becoming more of a part of that community as well, because people are recognizing the importance of working through trauma and of knowing when they need to raise their hand and say, like, hey, I think you need to go talk to somebody else, maybe go talk to a therapist. And then, even though I have a whole lot of other ones on my list, the last one I think is the spiritual religious community. I know that many of us separate ourselves from that, but I also think we can have great relationships with our local churches, and not particular to any specific religion necessarily. But I do really love to help educate our local pastors on Mental Health 101 and when they need to send somebody to talk to somebody. Because I think, unfortunately, a lot of folks go to their churches and their pastors for help. And some in the religious community maybe don't know when they need to pass the baton on to somebody who's more qualified. So anyway, those are lots of just communities that I think we are a part of and we're innately a part of, even if we are not necessarily like involved in those communities, because those are the communities that we're going to get referrals from. So with today's topic, with knowing your community, as always, I have some major bullet points for you. So if you're taking notes, I try to make it really easy for you to follow along with my bullet points, but also give yourself some homework on some of those topics. So the first bullet point I have for you today is, who are your clients? Where are you getting your clients from? Where are they coming from? And how did they hear about you? And what communities are they a part of? So this is easy access for us. We have very, very easy access to the clients that we're sitting down and talking to, the clinicians at our practice, who are they talking to, and who are the referral sources for those clients. So I think this is, number one, the most important thing. The people who are knocking on your door, submitting submissions on your website, and calling your phone number. Who are these people? So a couple things to ask yourself. What communities are they a part of? Because chances are they are part of some kind of a community. And within each community, there is the need, the desire, or the talk of the importance of mental health. So how in the world can we get to know these communities and identify what individual communities we're not a part of? And I'm going to give you my own example. I had a client who was a cancer survivor, and her whole identity had been wrapped up in her cancer diagnosis and fighting the fight and healing and her recovery and all the caregivers that surrounded her and her remission and then her re-diagnosis. Long story short is she was part of a community of other cancer patients and cancer survivors that I did not have a relationship with. I did not have experience with personally. And through getting to know this client, I also got to know her work through our local cancer center here in our area. And I took the opportunity when I recognized this community that she was a part of to say, wow, I don't know a lot about this community. And if I don't know a lot about this community, that means they don't know a lot about me, right? I don't know about them. They probably don't know about me. So I took it upon myself to reach out to the social worker at our local cancer center, their resource director, got in touch with them. And it was just a simple, like, yes, I'd love to come see what y'all are doing out there. So I go to the cancer center, I visit the center, I see all the programs, the support groups, um, the amazing, like, innovative things that they have going on over at the center. I get to know where they refer people to, and I was not on their therapy referral list. There were other private practices that were on the list, but I wasn't on the list. So not only did that trip help me get on the list, it helped me kind of move to the top of the list, because I said, hey, we accept these insurances. We have these, 6 clinicians who are well versed in pain management and cancer diagnosis and all these kind of things. And from that, I get steady referrals now. But that steady referral would not have started unless I was able to recognize the communities that my client was a part of and recognize how I could play a part in that community as well. So number one, who are your clients and what communities are they a part of? So think of some of the things I just spouted out real quick. I spouted out schools, healthcare, holistic care, integrative medicine, lawyers, doctors, court systems. I mean, there are so many different communities and sub-communities that we could be getting steady referrals from, and we're just not, because they don't know about us. So number one, what communities are your clients a part of? Know your clients and know the communities that they exist in. I think, the cancer one was, a pretty obvious example, but as always, if you come to my webinars, you know that I like to open up to you. So does anybody else have an example like that of maybe a community that you didn't even know that maybe existed or that you needed to be a part of until a client kind of sparked that for you? And then that changed something for you in your practice. Anybody have any examples they want to share? Michelle?
Similar to what you were saying, it was a little bit backwards. One of my clients was recovering from breast cancer, and anytime she would go into the clinic, I think she was talking about me, and she's like, "I'm going to a therapist. It's the greatest." Da da da. And eventually, they called me, the Johns Hopkins breast cancer clinic, and they said, "We heard about you from one of your clients. Would you come and would you do some stuff with us?" And so they do some like support group meetings virtually for caregivers, actually. And so it was like a neat way in, and it reminded me of what you're saying, like, okay, where are my people going? What are they talking about? And there are opportunities and inroads in that way. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Thank you for the example. That's great. Yeah. I think too, we don't even think about it until it's in our face, right? We don't even think that it's an option until it's in our face. And the really great thing is once you initially build that relationship, it's a set it and forget it. You don't really have to do a whole lot. I mean, don't get me wrong. There will be need and opportunity to, rekindle that relationship or tell them about something new you're doing or learn about something new they're doing. But I mean, once you initially make that contact and they know that you're a valuable resource in the community, there's not a whole lot of work after it. I've had people say, like, in other webinars, like, Nicole, you talk about going on these coffee dates with all these people. Like, how do you fit in all these coffee dates with all these people? Well, because I do it once, maybe twice, and then that's it. I built the relationship. I built the referral funnel back and forth, mind you, right? Like, if we're getting referrals, we want to give referrals too, right? So that relationship, again, you make that one connection, and it's really good. Anybody else have an example like mine or Michelle's? Corey?
I had a client, this was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, well, probably closer to 3, that had pregnancy loss. And she was talking about a foundation that was local called the Adeline Rose Foundation that supports families through pregnancy loss, stillbirth, and infant loss. Turns out I went to high school with this girl. She was younger than me, but I knew she was. And so now we run yearly retreats for couples. For lost couples, yeah. So we created this whole curriculum around lost couples, and they refer to us, and then we send people to them, and we collaborate with them pretty regularly now.
That's awesome. Yeah. Another just happen chance thing that if your client wouldn't have been a part of that, it wouldn't have happened the organic way that it did. Very cool. Another example I'll give you is one of my specialty areas is working with women over 50 in transition. And unfortunately, that tends to be women over 50 who are looking to get out of their marriages. And so Because I work with so many of those women, I also end up working a lot with their lawyers and providing support and going, kind of playing that role. So I built a relationship with a lot of divorce lawyers in our area too. And it's not that we're doing a whole lot for them or with them necessarily. So it's not that kind of relationship, but because they know my name and they know that I provide support to all their clients, when they have a new client that come in that says, hey, I'm really struggling emotionally with this whole divorce piece. It's contentious, it's difficult, or it's sad. They say, hey, call this practice. So again, who are our clients going to? So that's my first thing for you today is I want you to think about the communities that your clients belong to. And if you're making a little to-do list with homework, okay, I know some of you do, I want you to really sit back and think, who are the clients that I've had maybe just in the last couple of years? And think back to those sessions and think back to, okay, what communities were they a part of? And maybe it was just, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe a client just randomly talks about their acupuncturist that they go see, right? You don't know which acupuncturist it was, but I want you to think about that community and think about how and if the opportunity would be available for you to hop in on that community. So think about some of the examples, think back to some of your own clients. And then for those of you with, in group practice, I want you to start thinking about your clinicians. Maybe some of your clinicians have very specific specialties. And why don't we have a relationship with the other communities that relate to that specific specialty? So for example, I have 4 clinicians. Their specialty is the LGBTQIA community. They're rock stars. They know their stuff. And we don't really, they know of us, but we weren't really getting a steady stream until we went over there one day and we did a presentation for their workers on conflict resolution. And now we get steady stream. So again, it's about knowing your clients and what communities they're a part of, taking the opportunity to build a relationship. And if you're like, Nicole, I don't have time to build relationships, it could be as simple as writing a letter and saying, hey, we're here. Here's some business cards. Let us know how we can help. And that's worked for me as well. Because I think for some of us, going and taking a tour of the cancer center just is not in our schedule. Sitting down and having coffee with the executive director of the domestic violence center, maybe that's just something that you don't have the time for. And if that's it, that's okay. But you can get a lot from sending some business cards, a letter letting them know what we do, an email introducing yourself, a thank you card for the work they do in the community. We tell our clients all the time it's about relationships, so we have to practice that too. So again, number 1, who are your clients and what communities are they involved in and where are they coming from? Okay, number 2, how did your clients find you? We talked about this a lot last week, and it sounds like a lot of clients are finding you on Psychology Today and Google. For most of us, that's the case. I told you last week, if you're going to put your money into anything, put it into SEO because it's been proven to work again and again. But what I want to talk specifically today about, because we could do a whole thing on SEO, is search terms. What communities are your clients coming from? And oftentimes when we think about the communities, we can also think about the search terms. The pretty simple search terms are counselor in my area, therapist in my area, mental health in my area. But I want you to think, and believe me, you should have SEO just already set in place for those, easy peasy. But I want you to think about the other random search terms that people might be putting in there. Therapist for divorce, therapist for distant couples, therapist for my angry teenager who keeps getting kicked out of school, counselor for gut health, counselor for trouble sleeping. I want you to think outside of what our typical search terms would be, because again, we should have those set now. But oftentimes people will put in very specific search terms for very specific needs that they have. And when they do that, what's going to pop up is not us. The sleep clinic will pop up, the oncology clinic, the teen resource center, the domestic violence center. And those are great resources and we want our clients to go there. But that means they're never going to see that we have therapists at our practices that specialize in gut health, pain management, erectile dysfunction, sleep, all of those things. We have therapists at our practice that can really help people with those things, but they're never going to know that we exist. So with that being said, I want you to think your next piece of homework for number 2 is going to be to think outside the box of exactly what your possible clients might be utilizing as search terms. And then take a look at your website and think, how could I incorporate that into my website? If you have a certified sex therapist on your team and they are well-versed in helping men who struggle with ED, put that on your website somewhere. Because if that gets you one client, that time you spent putting that page on your website is going to pay for itself. And then you know what? That guy, he might tell his doctor that he's seeing you, and then his doctor might refer somebody else to you, and so on and so forth. If you have somebody that specializes with the LGBTQ community, put a separate tab, a heading, a subheading, or a whole separate page about that specialty or about that therapist with those subheadings, and that will build your SEO for that specific search term. Now, keep in mind, and I said this last week, I am in no way, shape, or form an SEO expert. I did the best I could watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts and coming up with it on my own. So I'm not the expert, but we all know that blogs, search terms, headings, subheadings, and separate pages and separate links is what builds our SEO up. So your homework for number 2 is going to think about the other search terms besides counselor in my area, therapist in my area, mental health in my area. So think about those other search terms that people might be putting in there. My biggest example is gut health. I had somebody, they finally found me through a different avenue, but they came to me and they were like, I just couldn't find a therapist that specializes in the gut-brain connection. And I said, I can explain, well, there's more research coming out about it. There's not really people who are specialized in that area. It's just kind of becoming a topic people are talking about. And she's like, yeah, but if I could have just found the therapist, because I'm working with my doctor, but I want to talk about the connection. Long story short, she found me eventually through another avenue, but it got me thinking, why don't I have a page on my website about people who are looking to address the gut-brain connection? Something to think about. Any questions on that topic? Any stories that you want to share? Any random search terms that you're thinking, oh, wow, I do get a lot of clients for that. That is something that I could put on there. One for one of my consulting folks is sex therapy. In our area, our particular little area of Northern Michigan, there's only like 4 actual certified sex therapists. If you want to see anybody, you've got to go down below Lansing. And so they were saying, like, I'm one of the only certified sex therapists in Northern Michigan, and I need to figure out how to advertise that. And so sure enough, we were able to do some things to the website that got them the specific clientele that they were looking for those specific search terms. Okay. On to number 3. And this is one that kind of goes along with this whole idea of knowing your community and figuring out what communities you can be part of. But I think it's important that you know who the highest employers are in your area. Who are the biggest employers in your area? Because the biggest employers have HR departments. And those HR departments are referring people to counseling all the time. And so something that I did, and this was years ago, but I reached out to one of our highest employers in the area. I reached out to their HR department. I reached out to their counseling department because they did have a counseling department, and built a relationship there. And now, 5 years later, we still have a steady stream of referrals. Another thing for me, and I know not everybody here is an insurance-based private practice, but for me, I moved from private pay to insurance in 2019. And one of the very first things I did when I decided to make that move is I found out who are the biggest employers in my area, who are the top employers, who have the most employees, and what insurances do they offer their employees. That's how I decided which insurances to take. Because I was like, I don't know, do I just take Blue Cross and Priority and Aetna and TRICARE and all the ones that I know off the top of my head. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look at who are the top 5 employers in my area. What insurances do they offer their employees? And those are the insurances I'm going to start with. And in my area, it's Blue Cross Blue Shield and Priority Health. So I was able to pick those 2 specifically to start with. And it's obviously paid off because that's what's got my practice to where it is today, is taking those 2 insurances. So knowing who the top employers are going to do a couple things for you. Number one, it's going to let you know where people are working and where they're getting their income from and where they're getting their insurance from. But also, it's going to give you a good idea of how you can connect with their HR departments and what services they provide. I know people have different opinions about EPAs, employee assistance programs. We used to accept them, now we don't. But reaching out to HR programs will help you find out what employee assistance programs they offer, and then how you can be a part of that if you want to. Because oftentimes, whether they have insurance or not, HR departments that have EPA programs will usually pay for up to 6 to 10 sessions, whatever your full rate is, oftentimes. So EPAs are a good kind of in there too.
I am so excited about Alma. When I had my private practice, I struggled building my caseload, attracting the right clients, managing the business side. And honestly, one of the reasons I didn't take insurance was it was so difficult to navigate. So many of my consulting clients deal with these problems as well. And Alma supports clinicians in building rewarding private practices with simplified insurance credentialing in under 45 days, enhanced reimbursement rates, and guaranteed 2-week payback, plus a free profile in their searchable, filterable directory, making it easy for clients who are the right fit for your practice to find you. Learn more about how Alma could support your private practice at helloalma.com/Joe. That's hello, ALMA.com/Joe to learn more.
The other opportunity you might have for knowing your biggest employers is offering education. Now, again, I know not everybody's in, maybe that's not what you're interested in, but for me, I love the whole education piece in our communities. So what I do is I reach out to HR programs and I say, hey, I offer seminars on conflict resolution, on building staff morale, on customer service, on mental health 101 and things like that. And then they call me and they say, hey, we're having a staff retreat in April. We're wondering if you can come and do a 1-hour, presentation on conflict resolution. So I go, I say, hey, I'm Nicole. This is my practice. This is what I do. And then I do my presentation. And then once you know it, I get referrals from not only the people who are sitting in the audience, but from the people who ask me to come and speak to their folks about conflict resolution. But again, it's about knowing the community. Who are the people who are going to be able to afford, those big employers, to have somebody come in and pay you to do a presentation? And it pays off, because not only do I get paid for coming in and doing the presentation, I take a stack of business cards that all have my QR code on them. And before you know it, we have a lot more clicks on our website. We have a lot more people reaching out to us for counseling. And then their HR department is sending them people as well. So this is one we don't oftentimes think of, but I think it's really important that you find out in your community who are the biggest employers. Now, for some of you, you already know that off the top of your head. You're like, okay, we've got a university, we've got a big hospital, and we've got a big insurance company. I'm using that as an example because those are my top 3 in my area. So those are easy. We just know that. But what about some of the other things? Casinos have a lot of employees. If you have a casino in your area, yes, they have usually on-site behavioral health services, especially if it's a tribal community, but they also have an HR department. And usually, at least in our area, all of the casinos have Blue Cross Blue Shield. And now they're a steady stream for us. So hospitals, universities, casinos, large manufacturing companies, large insurance companies, and large tech companies. So I want you to think about those, because everybody needs mental health. right? And sometimes they need mental health and they don't know that they need mental health. And so getting to know those highest employers are going to help you to build relationships with the employers, the employees. And then for those of you who are thinking, maybe I'll take insurance, it's a good place to start there too. Anytime I'm consulting with somebody, I tell them to find out who the biggest insurance is in your area before you just randomly pick insurances to get credentialed with. So I'd love to hear from all of you if anybody has anything they'd like to share on this front. So when I talk about the biggest employers, what are some of the things that come to mind that could be really beneficial to you that you didn't think of? And what are the things that you're like, oh gosh, I don't know how that would even work? I just want to hear from some of you. Anybody have any thoughts? Anybody have an example of how this worked for them, this whole idea of knowing the biggest employers?
I have a question.
Sure.
So how you had mentioned earlier and sort of like connecting with like an HR department of like, you know, a big employer, like how do you actually reach out to these people so that they care about talking to you?
I make it about them, not about me.
Okay. So I've heard that before, but like, what does that mean? What does that sound like? What is that, you know, and if you could even take it a step back, like, how do you even contact, like, literally, how do you contact these people? Like,
yeah,
like I know, or
I know it sounds funny, but I've mentioned this last week too. Everything is figure outable, right? So oftentimes what I do is I dive in and see what happens. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but it's worked for me so far. So what I'll do is I will call whatever number I can find online or on the website. And I will say, can you please direct me to the HR department? And usually I might get thrown around a little bit, but I eventually get there and I get somebody on the phone. And I start by saying, I'm a mental health provider, you know, in your area, and I'm trying to learn about the needs of some of the highest and biggest employers in our community. And that usually starts off a conversation in terms of what the needs of their employees are, what the needs of their, their higher ups are, what the needs are for education, what insurances they offer, EPA programs. And if I can't get all that information like on the phone, because you know how you can tell when you get somebody on the phone and they just want to get you off the phone real quick, I ask to set up an appointment with somebody in HR. And then I'll actually go there and I will sit down and I will say, hey, I'm here to see how I can help you and how you can help me and how we might be able to support each other and collaborate to address the mental health issues in our community. And I think the good news here is that the stigma of mental health is going down. It has since COVID. We've all seen it, right? So stigma of mental health is going down. People are talking about the need for mental health. And I think there's some level of liability for companies now if they ignore the needs of those who have mental health concerns. And so not that I play that to my favor necessarily while I'm sitting down with somebody, but I just make it very clear that mental health we should be talking about mental health the way we talk about other things. And how can we collaborate to make that a more open conversation for our community and for your employees? So do I have to sell it a little bit? Sure, I have to sell it. But how I get them on the phone is I just call a random number and ask for the HR department. And most of the time I get there. I haven't had to do it in a long, long time because, you know, we have that steady stream now. But interestingly enough, I made my goals for 2024. And one of my goals for 2024 is to reach back out to those departments because it's been, 6 years and chances are there's been a lot of turnover. And it's time to just like say, hey, we're still here. How can we collaborate? So hopefully that answers your question. So my homework then for those of you, because I want to give you homework for each of our bullet points. So for number 3, the highest employers, I want to challenge you with identifying the highest employers. Don't decide what you want to do yet. Don't decide if you want to reach out to their HR department. Don't decide if you want to offer seminars. I don't do that much anymore, but for a long time I was doing some of those seminar topics I was talking about and going to meetings and stuff. So don't think too much about that right now. Step 1, let's just find out who those highest employers are, and then you can go from there and decide what that's going to mean to you. And even if it is meaningful to you, I mean, our topic is what to do when referrals get slow. So this isn't necessarily like a reactive strategy. It's not like, oh no, we're getting slow. I better reach out to these HR departments and find out who the biggest employers are. I think this is a longevity move, and it's a move that's going to keep a steady stream moving forward. So if your referrals are low and you're like, I need more of a steady stream, it's an option. And remember, if we're looking at time as money and we're looking at how much time it takes to do this. If it takes 1 hour out of your day and an hour worth is $200 to you, right? If that gets you one client, you've already made your money back, right? You've already made your money back if you get one client, and chances are you'll get more than one. So keep that in mind. If you think of your time as money and how much money can you bring in, it's definitely worth your time. Okay, my fourth and final point for today is, who are the possible referrals that you could build a relationship with in your community? Now, I know I briefly talked about this with point number 1, and I also briefly talked about it last week, but I want to dive in specifically to some of these possible referrals and what they have the potential to mean to you. I've made a list, and what I'm going to do with this list is I'm just going to offer you some ideas of how it's worked for me or other practices I've worked with, and then you can find what resonates with you and see if it's an option. So the first one is the court system. There are lots of opportunities within your local court system to get steady referrals. So we get steady referrals for driver's license renewals. So when people have their driver's license taken away because of DUIs and they have to go to counseling and they have to do all of that, if I would not have reached out to our court system and said, hey, we offer this service, we would not have that steady stream of referrals, because not very often were we getting calls for somebody saying, hey, I need to go to a counselor so I get my driver's license back, right? We weren't really getting those kind of calls very often, but every once in a while we would. Once we reached out to the court system and we said, like, hey, we offer this, we get more referrals now with that. Another way that we get referrals from the courts is with friend of the court. So when friend of the court, they usually oftentimes deal with child custody and child custody arrangements and parenting time. I reach out to the friend of the court caseworker and I let them know, hey, we offer co-parenting counseling. We get a lot of referrals for co-parenting counseling, because who's the very first person that's going to see co-parents fighting, arguing in front of the kids, struggling to come up with a parenting plan, struggling to make decisions with their co-parent, struggling to communicate? It's going to be the friend of the court caseworker, right? Because they're the ones getting the angry phone calls and the angry emails saying, so-and-so is not following the parenting order. So-and-so didn't show up on time. So-and-so told me this and that. And when we reached out to friend of the court and said, like, hey, can you share with all of your caseworkers that we have 2 therapists at our practice now who specialize in co-parenting and offer this service, at this rate, we started getting referrals. Not only that, we didn't know this, that friend of the court, at least in our specific county, had gotten a grant to utilize for co-parents and didn't know what to do with the money. So now we have these families who can get 2 free sessions that we get paid for and that the court pays for. So many, depending on whatever the grant money runs out, right? But a lot of these parents who either, we couldn't accept their insurance or insurance wasn't going to cover it, they can now, be able to get those services for free. And if we wouldn't have reached out, we wouldn't have known. So another time that we oftentimes hear from the court system is folks who need drug or alcohol assessments. We only have one therapist at our practice who offers those official assessments, but he gets steady referrals because we reached out. And then we also have a fairly good relationship with our prosecuting attorney at the courthouse with our county. So we oftentimes will get folks who are in domestic violence situations and, need to heal from those scenarios. So reaching out to the court system was a really great referral that I didn't really touch until a couple of years ago. But once I did, we got a steady stream of referrals. And remember, the time that it took me to write the letter to say, hey, we're here, and to reach out was probably about an hour. And I got my money back, 50 times, 60 times, whatever, since then. So it's worth the time and effort that you put in, even if you get one client. I just want to pause with the court system for a minute. Anybody else have specific ideas of how they can get referrals from the court systems in your area? Drug court, sobriety court, friend of the court, family court. Okay. So yeah, that's a really good one. The next one is doctors. I've talked about this a lot in my webinars with Practice of the Practice, so I'm not going to go too much into this. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors, at least in my area, are referring folks directly to Psychology Today. I had 2 doctors straight up tell me I don't make specific referrals to therapists. I tell my clients, go to Psychology Today, type in what insurance you have, where you're looking, do all the little filters, and you will find your therapist, and then you can start making phone calls from there. So that we were actually going to get rid of our Psychology Today because we just weren't getting enough referrals from that. And it was after that those 2 doctors actually told me that we decided we would keep our official Psychology Today up and running, because they said, nope, we're not making direct referrals anymore. There's just too many therapists in the area. Although there are some doctors who are still making specific referrals. And so having a relationship with them, sending them new rat cards to put in their lobbies, sending them what I like to do. I know this sounds silly. I just did it because my doctor's office, they really like it. But I'll take like our little business cards here, and I will just do like a nice little stack about this big. And then I'll just wrap like a little ribbon around them. And I will make enough for each of the doctors at that practice. So each doctor at the practice in their little office has their own special little stack, rather than just sending a great big stack that the office manager is going to set somewhere and forget. So that's just a little like random thing that I do sometimes, but it seems to work, because then we get specific referrals from specific doctors, and they might not come in the form of a referral form to our website or to our intake coordinator, but it'll be a client showing up saying, hey, I got this card from my doctor. So something to think about. With that, I want you to think about specialized medical teams. So oncology, reaching out to them, pediatrics, sleep study centers, urologists, the women's health clinics for pregnant women. I think if we think about all of the specialty areas in our medical system, we can build relationships with each of them. And remember, one client, one referral will make it worth it. So just think of it that way, and it doesn't seem so much. All right. The next one, which is kind of like the court system, is I want you to think about lawyers in your area. I don't know about you all, but in my area, there are so many lawyers. It's what I imagine my clients go through when they try to find a therapist in our area, because there's just so many of them, right? I can imagine when you're trying to find a lawyer, you're like, where the heck do I start? There's so many. How do you know who's the best? What do they charge? Do they have openings? So what I started with was just a formal letter. And I put this on my intern. So if you have an intern, you can give them some of this dirty work. But I just did a form letter saying, this is who we are. These are the services we provide. Here's a stack of cards. And then my intern printed them off, put them all in envelopes, took them to the post office, took care of it and everything. That was how it all started. And then it kind of turned into more specific relationships with specific lawyers, specifically ones who deal with criminal drug cases and divorce cases and domestic violence cases. So building a relationship with those specific ones did seem to make a difference. I know most of us probably have our own lawyers. I built a relationship with a local lawyer for my business stuff. And then because she knows that I'm there, I was able to ask her, and I had a meeting with her last week. I was able to ask her, like, hey, I want to build relationships, kind of rebuild my relationships with some lawyers that specialize in these areas. Who could she send me to? And she gave me a list of people, which was really cool too. So again, use your current relationships as well. So lawyers are always a good one as well. The schools. There's a lot of schools in our areas, and there's everywhere from preschools and daycares to Montessori programs. We have a lot of nature. We have 3 nature schools in our areas. So nature schools, we have, our middle schools, high schools, our university center with our college students, our trade schools, our career tech centers. There are so many educational opportunities. And guess what? There is a social worker in almost every one of those buildings. So building a relationship, sending a letter, sending an email to them. Again, you get one client and it's worth it. So, and if you're like, gosh, Nicole, how am I going to come up with all these lists and all these addresses? If you can get yourself an intern, do it. I know that when we take on clinical interns, the idea is that we want to give them clinical work. But anytime I bring on an intern, I tell them, there is going to be a mix of office work, and the clinical work you're going to be doing. Because I tell them, like, as a therapist, I've got to do data entry. As a therapist, I got to pick up a broom and sometimes I got to sweep the floor. As a therapist, I have to make coffee and maybe clean up somebody else's mess in the sink sometimes. So if that's the role that I play and I'm training you to play that role, then my expectation is that they're going to do some of that dirty work. They're going to do some of that, busy work sometimes. So every year that I bring on an intern, I have like a list of what I call specialized projects for them that are not necessarily clinical. They're more business related, but it takes some of that burden off of me. And it gives them hours, right? Because I know that for our interns, for those of us who take them, sometimes getting them those clinical hours can be really difficult. So I have these little projects that they can take on, usually related to business and marketing. My last one that is hopefully, it was out of the box in the beginning for me, but not so anymore, is I want you to think of more holistic modalities and how you can build relationships with them. So I have specific relationships with some energy workers in our town. So people who do Reiki, energy healing, intuitive healers, things like that. I get referrals from them, and it's really nice because I get folks that come on and they are much more open to some of the work that we do because they're already open to the holistic stuff that they're doing. So I want you to think about massage therapists, acupuncturists, energy workers, things like that, because they're a great referral source. And again, the clients oftentimes come in and they're ready. They're ready. My last one for you, I know I just said that was my last one, but this is really my last one, is churches, and not necessarily the people who go to church, but the leaders of the church, because most churches have counseling programs. And oftentimes those counselors with great intentions and probably a certain level of training are not trained the way we are trained, right? They are not certified mental health practitioners. And so what I do is I meet with them so that I can help them recognize when they need to pass the baton, because spiritual counseling is great. But when you have somebody with major depressive disorder, you can't pray the depression away, and they need to come see somebody. So building relationships with pastors and with counseling pastors at our local churches has been really beautiful too. So, all right. So just to recap, I have 4 things from today. I have number 1, who are your clients and what communities are they a part of? So think about that. Number 2, how do your clients find you? Think about those outside of the box search terms that you can put in Google. Number 3, who are the highest employers in your area? And then find out what insurances they accept, what their EPA programs look like, build relationships with their HR department. And then number 4, who are the possible referral relationships that you haven't thought of? Who are the referrals that you're like, oh gosh, I never thought about reaching out to the court system, but wow, that would be a steady stream for us. Think about those outside of the box referrals, because even though most of us get our referrals from Google and from somebody searching counseling, there's all these other opportunities that could be missed if we don't build those relationships. So hopefully I brought you something today about how you can build your referral base by knowing your community. And I'm going to stick around if anybody has any questions. But I want to thank you all for being here. We're going to continue with our third meeting for this 3-part series next Tuesday. So hopefully I'll see you there. I hope you all have an awesome day. And if anybody has questions, I'll stick around. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for listening to the Practice of the Practice podcast today. These trainings are available in our membership communities. Now, we're going to be opening up our membership communities more than just when we're opening Level Up Week. So if there's one that you are interested in, I would love for you to head on over to practiceofthepractice.com/membership, where there's more details and you can get notifications when those open up. So if you are in solo practice, just getting going, if you are building and sustaining a sustainable solo practice, Next Level Practice is for you. If you are looking to launch a group practice launch is for you, and Group Practice Boss is for all those group practice bosses out there. We are so excited to bring these types of things to you as much as we can so that you can level up your practice in a way that's just amazing. Head on over to Alma's website, helloalma.com/Joe if you want help with credentialing, if you want help with reimbursement rates and a guaranteed 2-week payback. Again, that's helloalma.com/Joe. Thank you for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.